Today's guest built Australia's fastest growing crypto brokerage, scaling from 100 clients to over 10,000 clients in just 3 years. But here's the crazy part. He joined when the brokerage was about to shut down. He fought for the division, and the founders told him the only way they will keep it was if he was willing to put his balls on the line and share the risk. So he did. He bought in. That decision changed everything. On this episode, we're speaking with Bisher Khudeira, COO of Stormrake, and we're diving deep into the essentials every entrepreneur must know before buying into any business or choosing a business partner. Most people get this completely wrong, and it costs them years of their life and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. If you're thinking about partnership, equity, or buying in, this could save you from a catastrophic mistake. Welcome back to another episode of Founders Playbook. As per usual, we brought in a legendary guest. He leads one of Australia's fastest growing crypto brokerages, which mission is to help Australians escape the failing fiat system through Bitcoin. He's the COO and Executive Director of Stormbreak. Please welcome the legend, the incredible Mr. Bisher Khudeira.
Thanks for having me, Nelson. What a pleasure to be here. It's a genuine opportunity to sit down and have a chat with yourself, and I love everything you've built, so let's get stuck into it.
A few years back, you took a risk that most people would even dare to consider, right? Buying into a crypto business when the FTX collapse was taking place as well. But before we dive deep into all of that, what do people need to know about you that led you to that moment?
It's a great question. I mean, I've been in financial services for 10 years. So I started my career as an FX broker back in 2015, and I fell in love with everything that the financial markets can provide for myself, my family, the future that I was trying to build. Because from 18 to 21, I was just doing odd jobs, learning about myself, learning about what I like, what I don't like, and I fell in love with sales and business development was a natural calling for me. Being a Lebanese fast talker, it kind of comes part of the playbook, if you will, to borrow the name of the show. But in terms of how we've gone about growing, it was 5 years in foreign exchange. I really loved what financial markets means for myself and my investors because you can quickly compound and grow your capital over time. Of course, you can lose money as well in financial markets, but if you do it right, it's one of the fastest ways to grow your wealth. And that's what made me fall in love with it. And then I discovered Bitcoin in 2016 as a private investor, and then I went into the industry in 2019. And I built this brokerage where I worked for somebody else as an employee. So I've been in crypto brokerage since 2019. So that's 6 years, 7 years of pure crypto and Bitcoin broking was quite informative for me. So it was when I had the opportunity to build it myself, I was already deeply convinced that Bitcoin is one of the most important means of exchange and stores of value that we've come across as a technology and as an asset class. And two, if I can build a business that can help investors get access to it, I can do quite well for myself as well. So it was a culmination of a series of decisions, which was starting off in foreign exchange, moving into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as an asset class as a professional in 2019, and then working up my way to eventually owning my own business in the space. It was quite a natural progression. It wasn't like there was any one particular moment that made me decide to go take that big leap of faith. It was building for 10 years.
The 10-year overnight success. That's what they say, right? When people ask you, how did you do it? How did you build this business? Oh, it only took 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
During that transition of where we're about to get into on the moment that you actually buy into the business, there was something quite interesting that I came across during the research for this episode. How exactly did you turn a $5,000 deal into $750,000 on a McDonald's car park?
That particular deal is worth now about $400,000 because of the recent pullback in Bitcoin. But the way it worked is I went to find out how I can get access to Bitcoin. So I was like, how can I actually access this asset class? Because I was reading about it in Bitcoin talk forums in about 2015. So after a year of my own personal research and developing my own understanding of the asset class, I was ready to pull the trigger and make a purchase. And there wasn't, brokerages like us existing at that time. Exchanges were pretty unreliable, and I didn't feel comfortable doing a $10,000 trade by sending it into a random online platform. So I met up with somebody as a peer-to-peer exchange, which was quite popular, over 10 years ago as to how a lot of transactions occurred. But even that was a little bit, disconcerting because I was sitting in a McDonald's car park just in Middleborough Road in Melbourne, and I was waiting for the individual to come through. I was in my beat-up 2008 Honda Civic and waiting for somebody to knock on the window to say, hey, you here for the Bitcoin? It felt, super surreal because I was an FX broker. So I was just so used to jumping on a platform, trading my FX positions peer-to-peer, like on an exchange or on a platform. So this was quite a different way of accessing a financial asset for the first time, doing it directly, right? That was a really eye-opening experience for me. And then when I was driving home, I gave the gentleman $10,000 in cash in an envelope, and they gave me a very thin envelope with a paper wallet inside it, a Bitcoin paper wallet. And I was looking at it as I was driving home. I was thinking, what have I done? Have I done the right decision? Like, I've walked away with a piece of paper.
Did I just get scammed?
Did I just get scammed? Did I give $10,000 away for a piece of paper? But I went home, downloaded the wallet, set up on a new one, moved the funds from the paper wallet to my new hardware wallet that I had set up at the time. And it was genuinely one of the most liberating feelings I've ever had. I'm like, now have my own bank account without having to rely on any third-party assets whatsoever or third parties whatsoever. So I was already fully sold on what Bitcoin is. I just never had access to it myself personally. And then it was like, this is it. This is the real deal. And so I came to, at the time, my managing director, the firm that I worked for, and I said, this Bitcoin is going to be huge. Let's give clients access to it. And because we were a derivatives brokerage, they weren't confident on listing direct market access, but we were one of the first Bitcoin CFD brokers in the country. So we gave people access to the ability to go long and short on Bitcoin, first ever brokerage to do it in Australia. And we saw the massive influx in 2017 as Bitcoin went from $1,000 to $20,000. So yeah, I was able to flip $7 grand at the time to a 10x investment over a very short period of time. And that for me was genuinely one of the most exciting investments that I ever had. But I wrote it up to $20,000 and wrote it back down to $3,000. But I was still convinced, this was the 2017 run up to 2018 bear market. I was still convinced that this is going to take over the planet, that Bitcoin is going to orange pill the world and Bitcoin will be the future of money. It's now quite close to that reality in 2026, but not quite there as well. So another 10 years, we'll see what happens.
Do you still hold that Bitcoin?
Still hold it to this day. I've got a forever stack that sits in my cold storage, but big part of what I discuss with my investors is you need to learn how to use your Bitcoin. Because if Bitcoin just ends up sitting on people's balance sheets or sitting in people's cold storage and the UTXOs just gather dust, Bitcoin will not win in that environment. Yes, store of value, so that way you're not getting your currency to be debased and your purchasing power eroded away, yes. But two, you need to actually use the assets. So there is a stack that I just hold and don't muck around with, but there's also a decent chunk of my Bitcoin that I use wherever I can, wherever Bitcoin is accepted, or if I do need to convert a portion of my Bitcoin to Aussie dollars, it's on hand. But BTC is an asset that will not just win if it just lives in Sailor's balance sheet or just lives in Bitcoin cold storage or sits with custodians such as ourselves. It will live as long as people are using it as part of their everyday economy and everyday purchases.
Based on what you're saying there then, does Bitcoin hodlers are hurting the Bitcoin adoption?
I think there'll be a bit of a Rubicon for people to cross over, to go from store of value to means of exchange. We need to see things like merchant adoption. which, for example, the Steak and Shake story in America is a far more successful use case for Bitcoin than, say, MicroStrategy and Saylor. So Saylor has gone out on a massive, rampant purchasing spree and now controls almost 3% of the supply. I just want to also preface, controlling supply or ownership of Bitcoins available on the network does not concentrate the network itself. The network is still sufficiently decentralized, and no one who even has 10% of the supply can dictate the rules of the network. But still, a massive concentration like that isn't appealing to me as a true Bitcoiner. I believe Bitcoin adoption does require your sailors, does require your institutions, your big banks, your sovereigns, to go from Bitcoin at $60,000 today at a high of 126 a few months ago to cross over and become $1 million asset itself with a multi-trillion-dollar market cap. It will require the institutions and it will require the hodlers, if you will, but Bitcoin will only become the universal and the most successful currency on the planet if it is an accepted mediums of exchange. And so I wouldn't say they're hurting it in the short term. In fact, they're probably helping the case of Bitcoin become a universal asset for everybody to participate in and a universal network. But we certainly don't want to carry that philosophy 10, 20, 30 years into the future. We want a thriving Bitcoin economy where your local mum and dad coffee shop, which I just came from now, accepts Bitcoin, and then you can buy your car in Bitcoin and you can settle your property in Bitcoin, and you're not having to go through banks and intermediaries. It's just direct. Me and you, what have you got on offer? What have I got on offer? Let's transact and settle with each other in Bitcoin. That's when it wins. But if it just sits on balance sheet and cold storage forever, then we haven't won anything. We've just got a digital collectible, and similar to gold, where it's just some people collect it all the time, don't do anything with it. That's not productive. Whereas I feel Bitcoin in the economy can really help a lot of folk out. Even the coffee shop that I went to, when I paid with my Apple Pay, they're going to have to wait 3-4 days to receive settlements of it. And there's merchant fees and card processing fees, and they get, skimmed off the $4.50 coffee that I purchased. They lose a couple of percentage points just to the merchant fees. So whereas with Bitcoin, it's direct peer-to-peer and they retain the full earnings of what they sold. So I think that's a far better outcome and economy, in my opinion.
That's a very interesting viewpoint, because most people, what they always say is never sell your Bitcoin. And you're coming and saying, no, you need to sell some of your Bitcoin.
Use your Bitcoin. Yes. Get on chain. It's exciting. Like I went to a pub in Melbourne. You'll come with us when you come down to Melbourne. And it's called the Fox Hotel. And it's one of Melbourne's oldest pubs. Like you walk in there and it's just like you can smell the history of this pub. You can smell it. And you can go out there and you can pay for your chicken parma, your beers, your steak sandwich in Bitcoin. No conversion required. It's really awesome to see, because that for me is true adoption. Steak and Shake in America, that's true adoption. When I'm going to be in Las Vegas for the Bitcoin conference in a few months' time, and I was there last year, paying for my quick lunch using Bitcoin genuinely felt like something from the future. Didn't have to use a card, didn't have to use Apple Pay, Google Pay, didn't have to convert any of my Aussie dollars to US dollars, just straight settlement in BTC. That for me is just epic, because it's like I'm actually being a part of the economy. I'm being a part of the Bitcoin network without having to try to dump my Bitcoin for worthless fiat currency. I'm passing my Bitcoin over to somebody who's giving me a good or a service or a nice meal, and they get to walk away with the Bitcoin and keep it safe until they need to use it somewhere else.
Now, let's go back to you joining basically Stormbreak, right? Mm-hmm. What year did that take place?
That was 2022.
So in the same year, right? So you come in 2022, you come into Stormbreak. They have this brokerage arm to the business, which is about to get closed.
Yep.
Right? But you decided to take a contrarian opinion on the closure, and you just say, hey, I'm buying in, right? Yep. And the FTX collapse, which was a major event in the crypto space, was also taking place on that same year too.
Yep.
Why did you decide to take that risk?
Well, it's you got that history there where I've been in Bitcoin since 2016, and I saw a successful Bitcoin and crypto brokerage when I was working there as an employee back in 2019 till 2021. So and that was during a really strong bull run. I was like, I was genuinely convinced that this asset class was just going through a pretty nasty correction, and there was a lot of fraud and deception that was occurring in these exchanges and some of these players. But that wasn't a reflection of Bitcoin. It was just a reflection of Bitcoin being used as money and people misrepresenting their services to the public. So that since then has been a pretty open and shut case of fraud and deception. But that's not unique to Bitcoin and crypto. I mean, you had one of the largest cases of fraud was the Bernie Madoff case. He was the chairman of the NASDAQ, for example, and he ran a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi. That was traditional finance, but that didn't mean that equities was a Ponzi. That didn't mean that the stock market was fraudulent. It just meant the individual who was misrepresenting themselves as this, master of the universe, top-tier investment manager, wasn't that and was just running a glorified Ponzi scheme, as was FTX. It was like I already saw those parallels between the traditional financial services and within, DeFi and also crypto, was that people can misrepresent what is a pretty good and neutral asset class and can do bad things with it. So my conviction level didn't really change with the price. And because Bitcoin, the network and the Bitcoin rules were still the same as they were when I came into it in 2016, there was no reason for me to change my viewpoint or my belief in the trajectory of the business or the trajectory of the network itself, because Bitcoin was the same. It was the same as it was before I came into it, and it's the same as it is today. Whereas, those who come in and out and use this asset class and industry to misrepresent themselves and to take advantage of a wonderful new technology is not a reflection of the technology itself. So, and Stormrake, to be fair, got founded in 2019. The two original gentlemen who started it, Michael Milmeister and Doug Hemingway, one of them comes from a more technical and product background. The other one came from more of a financial markets and risk management background. What they were missing was the sales business development background, which is where I came in. And between the three of us, and we're still in business together today, we've got everything covered, because I'm the first person to put my hand up and say, I can't code to save my life, right? And with the rise of AI, maybe that's a good thing, because the coding is looking pretty impressive with those tools. But I couldn't create systems and I couldn't create an architecture for our platform that we have today without Doug. And then the finance and risk management aspect of the business, making sure that our commercials are in place, making sure that our balance sheet is healthy. That's where Michael comes in. And so, between the three of us, it really was a nice completion of each other's skill sets. So that's where I just turned around and said, I don't want to give up on this, because you're not going to find a lot of places that has such complementary skill sets. So not only was I bought in on the product and the industry and the asset class, I was bought in on the management team. I said, if we can work together, the three of us, we can build something truly special, because you have skill sets that I don't have, and I've got skill sets that you don't have. So let's hunker down, build something whilst the market condition is less than ideal, and we can build something special over the next few years.
You brought a very important skill set to the team, which is sales, the oxygen of every business, right? But more importantly, you have to sell them on letting you come into
Correct.
the team. Right?
If I couldn't convince them to give me access to the cap table, how was I going to sell anyone onto Bitcoin? So it's just genuinely, it all came around,
Now, tell me about that moment, right? Like, what exactly was happening on that day that you come to the office and they're saying, like, hey, we're about to shut this arm of the business? Like, what exactly? Take back to that moment. How did that take place?
So it was early November when the FTX collapse was happening, November 8th, and it was just a really tough time in the market, because Bitcoin was hovering around $22,000 after coming off 70K, which was its previous all-time high. And then we just lost 20% in a very short period of time. We went down to $15,000 again. And we're a brokerage, right? People need to come to us to buy, sell Bitcoin. And the volume just collapsed. There was no more interest in the space. All the tourists were flushed out. There was a genuine concern that, everything got to do with this space was just a reflection of FTX. So it was quite extreme, the emotions and the sentiment in the space. And in late December, just before Christmas, the guys and I sat down. We were having a little private Christmas lunch between ourselves, And we had less than 100 clients back then, most of them friends and family of ours. So no strangers or no one off the street who had not known us. And we were having an honest and frank conversation about what our plans are for 2023 at that time. And they were like, look, I think we should fold the business, at least the brokerage arm of the business. And we can focus on what we started, which was arbitrage trading. So they were running their own private trading desk. They're like, we can go back to arbitrage trading and not worry about the brokerage business anymore. And that was a genuine conversation that we were having, and we were entertaining it over steak and red wine and a few whiskeys. And I think our emotions were getting the better of us. But it's good to have those hard on your sleeve moments between yourself and your business partners. But I turned around and I said, guys, this brokerage business is going to be absolutely epic. We just have to sit through the pain right now. And that was a tough conversation for me to have, because I had to show that I was committed. And they were like, well, it's easy for you to say, let's keep this going, because, if the business goes to zero, it doesn't reflect anything on yourself. I said, then let's change that. Let me come into the cap table. Let me buy in. And so when we had that conversation, it completely changed everything, because the incentives are now aligned. I'm not saying keep it going as a business, because I was the first employee at that time. I wasn't saying let's keep the business going so I can collect a monthly salary. I couldn't care less for the monthly salary, because now I'm bought into the business. So our incentives are all one and the same. So that conversation it had to happen, because we couldn't turn around and say, I couldn't push and say, keep the business going, and just because it didn't reflect on me very well. If I just said, keep the business going and let me collect the salary, then the incentives were all completely misaligned. So that was a huge part of why I think that we are successful today, is because now as a business and as a management team and as a cap table, we're all unified in our viewpoint, and we all share in the same risk. Because yes, there's massive rewards in running a business, and running a successful brokerage is quite lucrative, but we now share in the same downside risks, and that completely changed the way we approach business as well.
What an incredible story would it be as well for the three of you, like you coming as the first employee, and on the worst possible time, you step up and say, hey, I'm keen to join, I'm keen to buy in, right? Yeah. At that time as well, because you're like the business is being heard, how much you have to pay to join the team? What did that look like?
Look, it wasn't that much, to be honest with you, because the business was only a few hundred clients at the time, as I mentioned, mainly friends and family. So what we were buying into was the idea, and what we were sharing in was the risk, right? So it didn't cost a lot. It was good value. There was a bit of back and forth on the price, and as you naturally would. No good entrepreneur should just accept the first offer. Yeah. But no, it was a really honest conversation, because I'd already been working with the guys for 6 months as their first employee. The conversation immediately became far more fruitful and rewarding for all of us, because we had the right types of alignment, and it was good value, good discounts, and just like buying Bitcoin at $15,000, right? So everybody today would love to buy Bitcoin at $15,000 because it was cheap. So was a business that was selling Bitcoin and brokering services to access this asset class. It was good value, but the future expected value that I had of Bitcoin at the time was $100,000. And I had my future expected value of Bitcoin, of Stormrake as a business, was in the millions of dollars. So if I can buy in for, a couple of Bitcoin, sure, why not? Because my expectations of growth of the asset class, the industry, the business are just magnifiers. And, when you have access to Bitcoin itself, it's great. It went up from that point onwards, 7x return at its peak. Even now, it's still a 3x return to this day, right? Despite the recent correction. And so, but whereas with Stormrake, it has grown probably 50 times over in terms of revenue, headcount, profit margins have all blown out. We can become extremely successful because of the fact that, we're so sensitive to the underlying asset class. It's like, imagine if you're, a fruit and veg salesman, and all of a sudden there's a fruit craze, you're going to do really well, right? And so that's the kind of exposure that I wanted to have access to, which was, that beta, that high beta. So that way, if Bitcoin goes up 3 or 4x, which I still anticipated to go many more multiples of that than today's price, then my business should grow multiples of that as well. So if Bitcoin goes up, say 10x over the next 10 years, which is completely doable, I want my business to 100x over that period of time because of the sensitivity I should have to the underlying asset class.
Exactly. And you're taking basically the medium of exchange, just allowing people to get the asset right themselves.
Yeah.
In terms of you, so you come in, you negotiate with your business partners. What does that look like as well, going home and telling your partner, like, hey, and at that point, I think you would have had already your first kid.
That's right.
So you're coming home, having this conversation, and what did that represent to you as well, buying in terms of, did that put you under financial stress, or were you ready? Like, what did that look like from your end?
Yeah, I had a 2-year-old at the time, and my wife was pregnant as well with number 2. So at that time, it was an interesting conversation with my wife at that time. She was like, "Are you sure that you want to do this right now?" Or she was like 3 months pregnant, and she's like, "Do you really want to make this decision?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And when she knew I was fully bought in and she saw how serious I was about it, she was a massive support. So I couldn't have done it without the home being perfectly aligned to what I was trying to achieve in the office. So I had that home alignment and now the commercial alignment with my business partners. And yeah, it was an interesting conversation, but nonetheless, after a few dinners, and she's like, "Okay, sounds good. You're bought in. I trust you. You won't let us down." And I was completely convinced that even if it was to go wrong, which it didn't, the story is pretty apparent as to what the outcome was. But even if it did go wrong, I could always go back to financial services. I've got a career spanning at that point 8 years in foreign exchange and crypto. There's something out there for me on an employment basis. But I'd rather take the chance of running my own business, having a real, us Aussies say, fair dinkum, right? You probably have heard it already. A fair dinkum crack at trying to build a genuine business of my own. And if I got it right, great, I get massive upside. If I get it wrong, it's a good experience, a good learning curve. And so when she understood that, it was a very easy conversation, and we were fully bought in and invested at home. And I think that is a big part of today's success, is having that good alignment at home with what you're trying to achieve, with what you're trying to achieve commercially and within your own business. It's important, because if you have any disconnect between the two, you can sometimes run amok or run afoul.
Absolutely. If you don't have that support, right, or you're obviously, I'm guessing at that point, even though you're fully sold on the conviction on the asset, you still have that fear, right, of what if this doesn't work out, right? Yeah. What if things don't go exactly as I think they will? And then if you have someone at home, the closest person to you telling you, "Hey, no, I don't think this will work out." Well, that's not helping the situation, right?
Exactly.
The conviction. Hey, real quick, if you're a founder, CEO, or business owner looking to build a personal brand, become a thought leader in your space, and attract premium leads, our viral video podcast systems can help. Book a call with the link in the show notes to speak with my viral podcast team today. Now back to the episode. Everyone gets on the same page, right? Both at home, you come and negotiate and get the stake in. Is this an equal split kind of thing? How does that work? What did that look like?
So they retain 60% of the business, and I came in with, they retained 66% of the business, and I came in with 33%.
So an equal stake for everyone on the business. Then at that point, you come in, you buy in. What did you do in those first 90 days as things are basically collapsing, but now you have skin on the game?
Yeah. I immediately went out and looked for referral partners because in foreign exchange, what is a really popular business model is known as the introducing broker programs. So you would go out there, find people who are talking in your industry or your niche, and then you go out and incentivize them with a revenue share. So say, look, you're already talking about foreign exchange, you're already an AUD specialist, and you do these YouTube videos talking about Aussie dollar, then send them our way for execution. So that was very popular in foreign exchange. So that was an immediate thing that I did to take advantage of what I believed was a underutilized model within the crypto and Bitcoin space. And we developed one of Australia's premier introducing broker programs where we have a revenue share arrangement with our referral partners. And what's great about that, it's also about that unity between the client, the referrer, and ourselves as a service provider. The client gets a far better level of service and price execution than what they could do themselves. the referral partner gets to partake in the upside, which is the revenue share. And then we get to take away, which is a client. We gain a client in the process. So those sort of arrangements where client, introducer, and service provider all win, that's the best type of outcome, I would say, you know. And so that was the first thing I did within the first 90 days. But that was hard in of itself, because nobody's going to open up their community or their audience to you when you don't have a reputation, when you don't have a brand or a business behind you that is, you know, appears like a big monolithic institution. But there was a few guys who were in a similar position to myself, you know, more niche internet celebrities who, you know, had a few thousand followers on their channel, but they were really big Bitcoin advocates and they were just starting out. And so we got aligned with them because it was easy for us. You know, niche internet influencer or, you know, a content creator who's got a small channel of 2,000, 3,000 followers. There's this niche Bitcoin broker based in Melbourne, 3 guys who believe in the vision. We put us together because it was just really easy. They had a much bigger platform than we did at that time and a much bigger audience. And they were able to say, look, if you want to get access to Bitcoin and buy the dips, and you know, Bitcoin under $20,000 is really cheap right now. I remember those conversations. And it was a really nice, natural partnership. So those are the ways that we really experienced a lot of takeoff success for us, was people who were talking about Bitcoin, who were interested in the asset class, who stuck around when the market was absolutely horrendous. And then we were providing that service for execution. It was just such a natural home run win. And then they grew. As the market recovered, they grew significantly. And therefore their audiences grew with them, and then they came to us, and it just was this amazing positive flywheel of asset prices appreciating, their channel and audience growing, our business growing, our client book growing, and then it just fed into each other. And then the word of mouth and the network effect took hold, and it just, yeah, it was really cool to see because everything kind of happened at the same time.
Seems like from everything you're sharing, you are kind of used to taking the unconventional approach to growing the business and getting yourself out of the sticky situations. Because how do you come across even the idea of a referral partner? Hey, let's just get these guys that have a niche personal brand on this thing on social media to partner with us so we can tap into their audience and sell what we do. That's not what 99% of people would have thought of doing. So where do you get that from?
Just trial and error, because the first 6 months when I was working with Stormrake as an employee, we did a lot of the traditional marketing route. We tried to do SEO, PPC, AdWords, get onto the Meta Business Suite, and we were just facing lots of hurdles because we were in a niche business. You know, you can't use crypto, for example, or Bitcoin on AdWords, and Meta is a little bit sensitive. Sometimes they do like it, sometimes they don't like it. And so we were just running into a heap of friction. So yeah, it's not like I was just sitting there smoking a cigar and having all of these genius ideas coming to me. It actually was just a lot of trial and error beforehand. And then I was like, well, why not give this a go? Because it's like the traditional route hasn't worked for us so far. Let's try something a little bit avant-garde, a little bit more unique, a little bit more Bitcoin, and we'll find something that works. And it's true to the ethos of Bitcoin, which is decentralization. We don't rely on, you know, centralized massive institutions like Google or Meta to help us grow our business. We went peer-to-peer, and we said, okay, word of mouth, connect together. You can partake in the success on a revenue share basis. So it just was like a culmination of things, the trial and error of trying the, you know, what most people would do and not getting the results. And then also sticking to the Bitcoin ethos of decentralize and go peer-to-peer wherever possible.
I think it was a brilliant move as well, in terms of that you saw that opportunity when everyone is just seeing blood on the streets, right? Because they are struggling as well, right? Those personal brands, because when Bitcoin is going great, they keep growing with it, right? But when things are not going that well, attention also diminishes with it, right? So you came in at the perfect time where, hey, not much is happening. Like they're kind of running under the radar. And then when things exploded, you just get the ride as well with them, right? So that was a brilliant move. Now, in terms of you working with many referral partners, what have you learned in regards to building relationships with referral partners to grow a business?
Yeah, it's just like any other relationship or client relationship. There's incentives. You need to make sure that they're kept engaged. You need to give value as well. So one thing I share with my referral partners is that I'm not just asking you to put a logo overlay and put a ref link in the description, right? Or, and say link to, my broker below. That's not of value to their audience, and it's not of value to us as well, because it means that there's people, the likelihood of conversion is very slim, right? So I said, I've been in this space for 10 years. I've lived and breathed this asset class. I've put 99% of my net wealth is in this asset class. If you ever want me to jump on and share my insights, as well as share a little bit about how we work together and have that transparency, it just meant that, boom, straight away the audience, their community understands and shares with us the success and understands the nature of the relationship. So one, the transparency aspect. Two, the value add from being able to do collaborative content and not just coming in and just spruiking, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. Yes, buy Bitcoin always, but why? Where does it come from? On what basis should you be making these investment decisions? What entities can you be trading through? And give value to the audience and to their community up front. They haven't even touched an account with me. They haven't even traded with me yet, but they're getting a lot of value. And so whether they choose to act upon that value that I share with them and trade somewhere else, that's okay. You're always going to get that whenever you're doing so. Like, you might have a business which is going out there and talking about how great their Porsches and, you should come down to the Porsche Center here in Gold Coast, and they end up buying one from a dealership in Melbourne. That's just the cost of doing business. But ultimately, there'll be a good majority of folk who'll listen and go, oh, this guy's giving me some really good insights. I'll go work with him. So for the referral partner, they're not just getting a service that's being extended. Yes, big tick on that. That's how we have the revenue share first and foremost. But two, they're also getting the benefit of somebody who's been in the trenches for 10 years that they can work with and collaborate with. And I have my referral partners who give me a ring and be like, hey, what's the sentiment like on the trading floor? What's the flows been like? What advantages what should we take advantage of right now? So those kind of conversations brings a lot of value to the referral partner, because then they're going, okay, I'm dealing with a firm and dealing with a person who really cares for my clients and will be with me through thick and thin. So that's what I found is a lot of success for me personally, is that we build a lot of trust with our referral partners by not just delivering on the service that I told them that we'll deliver, but also give them regular updates, give them insights, and show them that I'm not going anywhere. Because in this space, unfortunately, the crypto industry is full of people that are here today, gone tomorrow. And so you need to build that trust through longevity and time. And what starts off as a initial video introduction of, this is my broker, come and work with him, to all of a sudden we're doing weekly check-ins, we're doing monthly AMAs, and bringing a lot of value to the community. That takes time to nurture and develop, just like any other relationship.
Now, when looking for referral partners that can help you basically scale the business, which ones have been the best return on investment? What's different about those referral partners compared to everyone else? Because I'm guessing you have gone through some bad ones as well that didn't produce a good return, so it doesn't make sense, right? What's different about the ones that do work?
Look, what I've found has been the major difference is they have a genuine community who are aligned and are being educated on why they should be focusing on Bitcoin. So that is number one, is that they are an educator. The best referral partners we have are educators first and foremost, right? And the education they provide is very Bitcoin centric. It's not crypto centric, it's Bitcoin centric. Why Bitcoin, how it works, how to self-custody, how to keep your assets, without having to rely on third parties. That education, and obviously they're getting paid for their services as well, but that education framework builds a lot of trust with the investor themselves. And so now they've got this platform where they're learning about why they should be investing in Bitcoin, how to keep it safe, what is Bitcoin. So a lot of the major questions are already being answered first and foremost. So that's number one. And number two, it's like, okay, great. You've gone through this great deal of learning. You've been educated on why you should be investing in Bitcoin. You know how to keep it safe. What next? You need to buy it. So you go through a trusted execution partner that the referral, your educator introduces you to, and it's very warm, it's very natural. So they've just spent the last 3 months learning about what is Bitcoin, how to get access to it, why they should be using it, how to keep it safe. Then we just slot in at the right time and provide them a much needed service, converting their Aussie dollars to Bitcoin. And it's not, there's not even a sale going on. It's just a completion or an extension of my referral partner's business. They just have a external third party to do that from there. So, it's just genuinely such an easy fit. And that's where we found the most success. Whereas, there have been ones where we're just a logo overlay or a click on the link in bio and nothing happens because the audience doesn't have the opportunity to understand why they would be doing that. They don't know what benefit it has. Whereas if we come at the end of like a 9-month or a 9-module 3-month training course, then it makes sense that they come in and open an account with us. They might have some questions about the service and how it's rendered naturally, but most of it is already answered for them.
It's a natural progression and a seamless execution because ultimately you're a part of the process, right? Correct. In order for them to get that thing that they've been sold on and educated on, they can use a service like yours that perfectly fits in, right? Which is something that we have noticed that regardless of the industry that you're in, with referral partners, if you are a part of that buying journey and the customer ultimately getting what they initially signed up for, those tend to be the easiest winning partnerships, right?
100%. You've got, look at you, you've got luscious long locks. You go to your barber, you get it trimmed up, and then they go, oh, by the way, as part of your aftercare, this is what you should be using. And you're not even going to think about it. You're going to go home, put the product in, you've got nice, long, luscious locks now, easy money, right? That wasn't even a sale. But there would have been somebody who came into that barbershop and said, hey, use this after hair care treatment or this mousse or this whatever product. And they have it in their shop. And then they say, oh, to keep your locks in good condition, use this. You're not even thinking about it. You're not even going to debate it or question. It's like, oh, yeah, you trust this guy because you've already walked into his shop. You've spent 45 minutes getting a freshen up, a tune up. And then you walk out and they say, by the way, before you go, you should use this product. They obviously get a little bit of extra dollars through the door. The person who's produced the product, the hair care item, gets a sale as well because they would have had to buy it from them, and then they on-sell it. It's just such a natural progression of how things should work, which is sales shouldn't be forced. Sales shouldn't be feeling like you have to convince somebody to do it. You have a problem and you present a solution, and when you present that solution through a sales process, it's quite seamless, and that's what I focus on as well.
You're absolutely correct. In terms of you now, you're in the trenches. You figure out, hey, if we get this thing with referral partners working, we're gonna take off. How long did it take to turn things around for the business?
It was about 6 months. Yeah, 6 months after that. So we're now up to about July, August of 2023. And then it was trickling through for the first 6 months. And then after that, the floodgates open because you get to this point where it hits critical mass. You're talked about enough. You've been seen enough. You've been on 3-4 podcasts now. And then boom, the floodgates just opened up. We went from 100 clients to 1,000 clients within a 3-month period. We 10x'd the business, right? Obviously, we're from a very small base.
Wow.
Very small base, so it was very easy to 10x. Yeah. Now to 10x, we'd have to go from 10,000 to 100,000, which might take us a year, which is what my anticipation is. But still, it was a really great feeling. But it was just that you hit that critical mass, and then boom, everything just happened all at once. So it took about 6 months, but a lot of podcast appearances, a lot of content. A lot of education to be done as well, a lot of AMAs and private webinars as well. Not everything was public. And then it hit that critical mass in July, August 23.
Dude, that is so fast. You turn things around so rapidly. Did you ever, at that point when you're trying to make things work, did you ever second guess that this was going to work? At what point did you realize, we're doing this, this is happening?
Look, again, I was very fortunate in the sense that the market recovered as well at the same time. So, Bitcoin went from $15,000 to $30,000 over that same 6-month period. So it was just getting to that point where it was making a lot of sense. The business was growing, the referral partners audience was growing, the Bitcoin price was growing, and we were just, like a surfer catching the nice crest of the wave, and we just came in at the right time. So I would like to say that by June was when I realized that this thing is going to be really, really large. So yeah, the first 3-4 months, I was like, okay, let's see what happens. It was grind. There was no time to really even just take my head above water and say, is this working? It was just, let's put in the yards, let's give it 6 months of genuine hard work and then assess the outcome 6 months later. But by the time I got my head above water in June, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be big, because the market was running, the audience was growing, our service was being improved upon at all times. And then it just, right time with everything else. And then we went from $15,000 to $126,000 in Bitcoin 2 years later. We went from 100 to 10,000 clients. So there was a massive multiplier effect throughout the entire market, the industry, the asset class. And yes, right decisions. Yes, right strategy. But a lot of it was fortunate and right timing. You combine hard work with the right time and the right entry, you're going to get some really good results. That's what I found.
So you went from 100 clients to over 10,000 clients in just over 3 years?
Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah.
What changes now at this point in terms of infrastructure and team to be able to even serve that volume of clients?
Great question. I mean, we've got 30 employees now. We rely heavily on AI. I mean, everybody knows how big AI is going to be. I didn't even think about how big it was going to be for our business, but what would have otherwise taken a traditional financial services firm of our size, taking care of 10,000 clients, might have taken 80, 90, 100 employees. We can do that with literally a third of the headcount, just because of the fact that we're AI powered and enabled. The service is always human. And I think a lot of people are concerned about what AI is going to mean for them and what it's going to do for their job and their economy. It's just going to make the human much more important. The AI will do all the monotonous, repetitive tasks that are just genuinely mind-numbing and is not meaningful for humans to be doing anyway. And then we can have conversations like this, and then genuine humans can then render a real service. So it was, relying on technology, relying on people. I'm not on the phones anymore. That's a big change, right? 2 years ago, I was the only one looking after the clients. I was the only one looking after the referral partners. Now I've got 8 brokers, 4 client services. We've got 6 developers in-house. We've got 3 traders executing the orders for our clients and managing the risk as well. So whereas I used to have to do all of that, and my business partners, one of them would be coding all day long, the other one would be trading all day long, myself, I was on the phones all day long. And so now we've got teams around us, and it's more that we have to ensure that our team is engaged, that they're achieving the milestones that we set out for them, and making it bite-sized and achievable. I've gone from being a broker to being like a manager, and I'm hoping that I can grow my team to make that management role redundant for myself. Because if I'm not helping my guys become better than they are now, to the extent that they can train the next generation, all I've done by buying into this business is buy myself a job, right? And I don't want to buy myself a job. I want freedom. I want freedom of time. I want to be able to do what I want on my terms. Right now, that isn't even a question. All my focus, all my energy, all my attention is going towards building the business. But 3 years ago, 2 years ago, it was just myself and my 2 business partners doing every single aspect of the business. Now we're just making sure the business as a whole is achieving its goals and achieving its objectives, right? So that, I think, has been massively successful, is that we put full faith and full trust in quite a young team. I mean, we did the average Stormraker age of our 30 employees came out to be 24.
24.
Right? 24. So a lot of them are fresh out of uni. It's their first real job.
Young savages.
Young, bro, young. They're ready. They want to do it, right? And, beautiful young men and young women who are just ready to just take on the planet, and they've got this excellent energy about them, regardless of, whether they're in trading and risk, which has a very different attitude and mentality to be successful in it. You have to be a little bit more naturally conservative, whereas our brokers, they're naturally more bullish and optimistic. But what you need that diversity of team and opinion. But in terms of what we're looking at is these guys are really enabling us to step away from the day-to-day operations of the business. Now our focus is to build a really strong management layer to the business. So we're still, as executives, we're still doing a lot of the day-to-day management, but we're trying to nurture these young guns, these young talent to become the future leaders of our business. So we can just sit back and not necessarily sit on a lounge chair and sip mimosas, but not have to work on the day-to-day and work more on the year-long vision or the next 3 years of what the business is looking like, rather than worrying about the next quarter. That's what I'd be looking forward to.
It's brilliant that you actually took advantage of AI, because even though to someone like you and I, it's like, of course you should be leveraging this incredible one in a lifetime technology to know how to hire more humans. We fired over 8 team members last year because they made completely redundant with AI. We're like, why do we have these people? And then as soon as they were gone, nothing changed. Everything kept exactly the same, literally no difference. And we were like, oh my God, we were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars on team that was not moving the needle, right, for what we were doing. So now it made us even more intentional with the kind of talent that we're going to be bringing on now. But then I speak to so many still business owners that, they're looking to grow a personal brand and all these things. Some of them, there's still so many businesses that are not leveraging AI. There's still so many businesses that have no content happening. Like you seem like you're taking a very modern approach to everything. You're jumping even onto podcasts. You're now building even an in-house media team to help you amplify everything. Why are you doing that as well?
I mean, it's taking me back to why I was in Bitcoin 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, is because I don't want to rely on how things have been to get myself ahead, right? I grew up in not an affluent family. I grew up in an immigrant family, which, had its own challenges, but it made me appreciate hard work. But what I realized from, my beautiful, hardworking immigrant family is that hard work isn't all that's required, because they've been working hard for 20 years and they're in the same place that they started 2 decades ago, right? So hard work is definitely a ingredient, but it's not the whole recipe. What was a massive accelerant for me was accepting and adopting new technologies and being able to try out new methodologies. So, I myself wasn't completely sold on personal brand, 12 months ago, but I'm willing to listen to people who are smarter than me, who are younger than me, who are willing to show me the error in my ways. Because imagine I had the same mind frame and mindset around Bitcoin 10 years ago. Humbug, I'm an FX broker. I just want to talk about Aussie dollars and euros and Japanese yen. And if I had that same mentality, none of all of these wonderful opportunities and experiences that I've had over the last 10 years would have been realized, because whilst I was an old school FX broker and I was talking yen, euros and dollars, when I was able to transition to Bitcoin, I saw a completely new way of transacting with one another, a completely new way of how we can preserve our purchasing power and transact with one another. So then that just informed me of everything else that I've done over the last 10 years, which is be willing to take risks, try out new technologies, try out new strategies, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be pretty shit. I'm not going to lie. But that one time that it actually takes off, bang, that's when you just have like this accelerant multiplier effect, whether it be to your wealth, to your business, for your family. It's just, it grows so significantly. So it all comes back to that decision I made in a McDonald's car park 10 years ago, which was to take a risk and buy something that was a little bit experimental and out of the box. That has informed all of my decision making 10 years later. And I hope that when I'm on the other side of it and I'm 40, 50, 60 years old, I'd be still willing to take those same risks that I had when I was, 21.
You can only connect the dots looking back as well.
Yeah.
Curious to ask you, because I've been doing business for almost 10 years now. And one thing that I've noticed is that 90% of business partnerships don't work. Like at some point, they will either go their part ways, or it's gonna get into some sort of legal situation. But I've seen like it either works so well that everyone becomes super rich and everything goes exactly as it once was dreamed of, or it goes completely to shit. That's the in between that I see, and after a long period of time. What made you want to buy into the two business partners that you currently have?
It's a great question. It's why I actually stated earlier, which is the complementary skill sets, right? I can't do what Doug does. He is our CTO. He's a big, beautiful brain. He thinks about architecture. He thinks about systems. He has a systems way of thinking. He has built our entire tech and product team. I can't think like he does. Genuinely can't. But I love the way he looks at the world. And then Mike has a very conservative and risk-taking approach, risk-averse approach, whereas I'm a bit of a risk taker. I'm willing to try new things. I want to take on opportunities. And I think that, for me, is why I wanted to come into this business, because, they've got 10 years on me. They have been in business longer than I have. They had something to share with me. There was almost like a mentorship that I was able to take from them as well. And I was able to come in with that jet fuel ready to go. And it's like, that's why I found that in our case, the partnership made a lot of sense. It's why I wanted to buy in, because I could spend the next 10 years of my life trying to cultivate their skill set so I can do it by myself, or I can just borrow their skills, go into business with them and do what I can do now, which I've already done and spent a decade building my skill set as somebody who loves being in business, somebody who loves sales, somebody who loves client services. I can do that and not have to worry about technology, product, risk management, because I've got business partners that are already protecting that, because these are things that you can't just drop the ball on. You can't just not have your eye on your technology. You can't not have your eye on your product. You got to have that fully locked in. You got to have a really tight risk management, because if you don't, your business will go, right? So, but if you don't have somebody who's driving and accelerating the growth of the business, the sales of the business, the revenue of the business, then nothing's going to happen either. So that for me was just such a natural fit that it just made a lot of sense to buy into the business.
I did it in a completely different way, which was starting my business completely from scratch. Now, looking into the future, I can foresee that it's going to be quite different. The next opportunities in terms of, it's probably going to be more like a buying thing into a different opportunity, which we're kind of already doing to an extent with some of our podcast partners. But I'm curious to ask you, for someone that is looking to buy into a business, what's the biggest piece of advice that you will give to them to make that a successful purchase or buying?
Well, it's what we just discussed, which is know your business partners, know who you're getting into bed with. It's an even more serious decision than knowing who your wife or husband is going to be, right? It's that, because it's your entire livelihood, right? A lot of people jump into business without much thought as to who they're actually going to be engaging with. And I was in a fortunate enough position where I was working for my now business partners as an employee for the first 6 months. I got to understand their vision, understand their way of life. I got to take their kids to basketball. I got to spend a lot of time with them and their wives as well. And we kind of built up this fraternity and this familiarity with one another. So that's really important, because you don't want to build a business with the people who don't share the same vision, who don't have the same ethics, who don't have the same, outlook on the world. You don't have to think the same. You don't have to be the same. We're very different people, but you need to share enough common ground to make sure that whoever you're buying into with, or if you're doing an outright purchase, that you understand that business back to front. So the two things I'd say is, I bought in knowing that my business partners, who were my employers, were going to take care of me, and they wanted me at the cap table because they knew what I was capable of and what I'd already achieved. And then number two, we knew the business. We had spent privately, before we went into Bitcoin ourselves, before we went into the business of Stormrake, we were already privately heavily invested ourselves. So we knew our business and industry back to front. Whereas a lot of people go out, don't know who they're doing business with or who they're buying into, or they don't even understand really the business that they're getting into. They're like, oh, I'll buy this cafe. On paper, it does this kind of margins, has this kind of EBITDA, and I'll put in a manager and I'll just collect the difference. It doesn't work like that. You have to really know the business if you want it to be successful. And then once you get to scale it, then yeah, you can put in somebody to run the business because they're running the processes and systems that you've put in place, that you understand back to front. So when things go wrong, they can still call you or still message you, or I'm fortunate enough that I'm still in the business so that when I see things go wrong, I can immediately fix it. But those are the two things that I'd say. Know who you're in business with and know what business you're actually getting into in the first place. Because a lot of people look at business as on paper and they look at it as like a balance sheet treatment, and they look at the income statement and think, okay, well, I can spend 2 or 3 times earnings and buy this business and then I'll pay it off in 2 to 3 years. It's not like that. You have to have an understanding of the secret sauce, the inner workings, if you really want it to have that multiplier effect.
Get to know deeper than just the surface data and numbers, and get to know the people that you're getting in bed with, right, to 100%. Make it successful. What's the hardest truth you have to accept about yourself as an entrepreneur?
I'm not the greatest thing that's ever happened to this planet. That was very tough. I thought I could do it all by myself, but I realized that if I wanted to go far, I'd have to go with others.
What are the 3 most powerful questions an entrepreneur can ask himself to grow an 8-figure business?
What are you in business for? Why are you wanting to be in that profession or that industry in the first place? And how do you intend on growing that business?
After making millions of dollars, what's the most painful lesson you have learned of scaling a business?
Invest sooner rather than later. We didn't hire when we could have, and we wanted to keep the team small or control the payroll and control the margins. But I think that hurt us, not to the extent that we're not successful, but we could have grown a lot faster, a lot sooner if we started getting the right people in a lot earlier than when we did it.
If you could go back to the young version of yourself that just bought in to the business, he doesn't know what the future holds. And everything right now is being taken away from you, your podcast, your content, everything. But you could leave him with 3 things. What would those 3 things be for him to scale a successful business?
Always try new strategies, always willing to try new technologies, and keep doing what you're doing. You know, there's a reason why that success formula isn't having to be replicated time and time again. It's very easy. Just go out there, try new strategies, try new technologies, and stick to your conviction, and you'll be fine.
What's the worst business advice you have ever received?
Worst business advice you've ever received is try Google AdWords. It was garbage.
There's one even worse.
Yeah.
Do SEO.
Yeah. Something similar to that.
Yeah, we have heard that one a few times with business owners and founders. Opposite to that, what's the best business advice you have ever received?
Bring on proteges and have a mentor. So in my business, I'm fortunate to have 2 mentors that I get to work with, my business partners. And I've got 8 proteges that I'm taking care of and getting to mold in myself. So you should have somebody that you work with that you look up to. And sometimes that's vice versa as well. It's an exchange. And then have people who are, not subordinate, but junior to yourself that you can train up as well. So that kind of relationship, that chain is quite powerful.
Yeah, having the 3 things, right? The mentees, the mentor, and the person that is at the same level as you, right? That you're pushing everyone ahead. How can you help business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, and where can they connect with you to get that help?
They can come to stormrake.com, add Bitcoin to their balance sheet, do it in a way that is safe and responsible and makes sense to your business. So give us a call. We'd be happy to serve you and make sure that the Bitcoin that you add to your balance sheet or that you invest into for your own personal savings is done in a safe and responsible manner. Stormrake.com.
As per usual, all the links will be down below. If you enjoyed this episode, if you found it valuable, all I ask is go and share it with other founders and business owners. Other than that, we'll see you on the next episode. Hey legends, my goal with Founders Playbook is to help 1 million entrepreneurs build successful personal brands and businesses so that they can increase their impact and profits. You can support the mission by simply sharing the podcast with other founders and entrepreneurs, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on social media. Let's get to work.